All right, hi, I'm Jim Peacock with Peak Careers, and this is another one of my interviews that I've been putting together here on a somewhat a monthly basis. And this one is we're going to talk about how do we improve career development in high schools that really honors all career pathways. And today I've got Richard Hoffman, Karen McGrady, and Scott Harris joining me, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. But do you work with students who would best be served through some short-term training rather than all students going to college push that's going on out there? I know that's been a sort of a voice out there is all students go to college across the country, I believe, and really I wrote a blog on this recently and talked about honoring all career pathways, and I really want to talk a little bit and explore that today. So my guests today are Karen McGrady, who has spent more than half her career working with high school, college students as a teacher, academic advisor, career service provider. She grew up here in rural central Maine and is well acquainted with the benefits and challenges the area offers to young people. She works for JMG, which is Jobs for Maine Graduates, which is a state division of the Jobs for American Graduates. And she is based at Eastern Maine Community College in Bangor. Scott Harris is a high school counselor in central Vermont, holds degrees in education from UMaine and Goddard College, and in restorative practices from IIRP. He has experience working with all levels of students and has taught social studies, science, and behavioral support. Scott approaches school counseling from a holistic, developmental, and student-centered perspective. And his work with students revolves around social, emotional growth, career exploration, community building, and action-based research. Rich Hoffman is the Cooperative Education Coordinator for the Hartford Area Career and Technical Center. He spent 19 years teaching marketing education in Colorado, 12 years in post-secondary technical education administration in Kansas, and 3 years as the director of the North Country Career Center in Newport, Vermont. He earned both his bachelor's in marketing ed and vocational education from Colorado State in Fort Collins. And welcome to all of you. And thanks for being here, folks. So my first question is, so what do high school students need to help them choose a career? We'll start with Scott here. What are your thoughts?
That's what we're in the thick of right now. We start with our students in 8th grade, working with them in a quarter-long class that every 8th grade takes to help prepare them for high school. And part of that class is looking at picking a career that they're interested in, and then also researching where they want to live, how much housing costs, what they want to do, can they support what they want to do with the amount of income they're going to make from that career and how to get there. So it's a whole lot of information packed into a little class. From there into high school, we also work with them quarterly, if not more, but we meet with all students on a quarter basis to try to help them to develop what options they have in pursuing things that outside of U32 where we're at. And different ways to go about doing that. As a freshman and sophomores, since transportation is an issue in central Vermont, we're pretty rural, it's hard to get them out in the community, but we look a lot at what are you interested in, what are your skills, what are your passions, how can you take this career or this job that you're interested in and transform that over time if you get bored with it, or if you find that you don't want to be a teacher, if you don't want to be a builder, or if you don't want to do these things that you are so set on right now. I find a lot of students they have a one-track mind. They know what they want to do and that's it. And so my job, I think, is to really help them explore and to broaden their horizons. When they get into be juniors and seniors, we have a couple projects where they're actually out in the community doing job shadows with different industries that they might be interested in pursuing more of. And we also have a partnership with the Central Vermont Career Center, which has several programs too, where they can gain additional skills that will help serve them out in the once they graduate from U32. I want to go back to your original question, though, was what do students need in career preparation in high school? And I think it's just options and choices, and having the ability to explore those areas.
Great. So options and choices, right? Just ex- give them all of their options. Don't try to limit them, and then choices. And I think really that's a lot of where a lot of hope fills in is when people feel like they have choices. So.
Yeah. And I try really hard too when we're doing these interest profilers or using things through Naviance. If they don't want to do something, I'd rather them know they don't want to know. I'd rather them know that they don't want to do it and why than what it is they want to do. And I try to turn that into a positive when a student's like, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with that job anymore." I'm like, "Great, cross it off. We know it's not it right now. So let's move on to the next step here."
Perfect. All right, we're going to move on to Karen. Karen, your thoughts on what is it the high school students need to help them choose a career?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I wish we had the same kind of program that Scott has in every one of our high schools in Maine, because it sounds like they're really on the right track. Those are exactly the things that students need to be able to make informed choices. I came from a high school that had a pretty well-established program like that, and one of the things I think is critical is that you have to have the relationship with the students in order for them to really be able to accept the information that you're giving to them. So we have some success with that, but not all success. The other thing that's kind of critical in our area, and probably in rural central Vermont also, is that a lot of our students don't really have work role models in their families. We're generations away from having full employment in the mills, having many different jobs that people could choose from without having to really leave their hometowns. And now we don't have that as much, and it makes it harder for students to see what the choices are. They get the regular, police officer, teacher, nurse job array, but beyond that, they don't know a lot about what makes a career, what kinds of options people have, and there are thousands and thousands of careers out there. So how do we get them to that point where they can really explore it, and as Scott said, take a look at what their own interests are, and where's the match between their own interests, abilities, how much school they're willing to do to get the training that they need for a particular job, and then helping them figure out that pathway that's going to be unique for each of them.
So very much a lot of relationship building, but also relationship ignoring in some ways with the not so good role models that may be out there. So yeah, there's a lot of unique problems in rural states. There's no question about it that we face. All right, let me unmute Rich so he can actually talk. There we go.
All righty. There's a lot of what's already been said that I could say, but let me just say that we have to really encourage the students to explore. And that said, we also have to encourage them that it's okay to fail. And by that, I mean, find out something that they don't want to do so they can move into a different topic. And Scott alluded to that already in what he was saying. But I also think what we really need to do from an early age on is encourage or teach, if you can, or instow upon the students what they call soft skills. And I'm really calling them critical skills, that ability to work in teams, to learn how to learn, because the jobs that are going to be out there by the time a 8th grader graduates from high school could be totally different from what's out there right now. And we can do our best to train them for the jobs that are out there, but they've got to know that those jobs are going to change. So encouraging those students and instilling into them ways to think, play well with others, show up on time and ready to work is a big part of what we have to do with the students today.
Right, great points. And to piggyback off the one point is, I often say when I deal with students or clients that say, I'm undecided, I say, no, you're not. You know what you don't want to do. It's to both your points about crossing stuff off. You want to know what I don't want to do that job. That's very, very good information. It's very helpful for people. I'm going to unmute all of you, and just anybody else want to sort of throw something in before I go to the next question?
I'd throw this in, that one of the things that has to be considered is, as you mentioned earlier, about honoring all professions, and the fact that technical education has to have those same high standards in place that general education has learned to expect from its students. You know, when you get a 90% right on a math test, that's usually like an A minus. But do you really want that nurse to get the shot right 9 times out of 10? Or to get your mechanic to have your brakes work 99 times out of 100? You know, they got to work every time. They got to learn to do it right. And I think that's something that is now coming out that general education totally supports, is that technical education is not lesser education. It's just a different education.
Yeah, great point on that one.
Totally agree. Totally agree with that. And for some reason, even around here, where though many of those applied technology jobs are going begging right now because we don't have people trained to fill them, there's still a stigma about going to the tech school.
I know, it's crazy.
Encouraged by a lot of guidance counselors, by parents, by peers, and seen as definitely not as desirable as the regular college prep curriculum. It's really unfortunate.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen this up in Maine, Kathy, is with the move to proficiencies or standards-based graduation, is I think that that's opening some more doors for students to be able to explore that area where they're able to demonstrate their learning through these different modalities, which is what the law was designed for. I know there's some growing pains within the schools themselves, but I think for our we call it community-based learning, which is our career shadowing program. But students are able, we're really starting to beef that up, where students can earn some proficiencies through that, and trying to work with the tech center or the career center to match those standards up, so our students have that same opportunity to go over there. And a lot of times too, we see our students some will go over there for their junior year, come back for their senior year if they don't get a co-op, and then we can kind of set up our own type of co-op within U32, or do something a little bit more different and alternative than your standard Carnegie unit system.
I'm going to move to the next question here, and which is, so knowing what possibly these students need, you know, what about the career people that are in the schools? You know, the school counselors, the internship coordinators, the jobs for American grads. We have jobs for Maine grads here, and which is what Karen's involved with. There often are a lot of different people who've got their fingers in this pie besides just school counselors. But what can people in the schools do to encourage and respect all career pathways? And this time I'm going to just flip the order, and we'll start with Rich, and then we'll work our way back. Go ahead, Rich. Thoughts?
Sure. The first thought I have on that is that all educators, whether they are technical educators, general educators, counselors, outside groups like Creative Workforce Solutions, need to recognize that, especially for high school students, and I've done both secondary and post-secondary technical education, so I know the difference between how ready a student is for a career after high school versus an adult who's come in to learn after high school. But we need to recognize that need for truly post-secondary education. And by that I mean education after that high school, whether it's a one-to-one formal mentorship program at a business, a 2-year associate's degree, a formal apprenticeship that could last for several years, such as they have set up primarily in electrical and plumbing is what comes to mind. And then the respect by all educators and all those that are involved with the students to recognize that need for post-secondary education. Secondly, there's a need for non-duplicative education. You know, a student in our welding program, for example, can receive an embedded credit in science because there is so much science involved in what they do in that industrial mechanics and welding program. So why do they have to take or repeat a science class that's teaching them similar outcomes when they can get it through a program such as what we do. So I would do that with embedded credits and the need to recognize those things.
And that's sort of that equality issue, is that the science that's being taught over here is equal to the science being taught over here. They're for different reasons, right? I mean, why does everybody need biology, chemistry, and I mean, there's lots of different kinds of sciences. So
you can't build a set of stairs in construction without using Pythagorean's theory. So you
right.
have to recognize that it can be taught in different ways.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to move on over to Karen. Your thoughts on what can people in the schools do to encourage this respect of all pathways?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is to ignore the potential of getting our alumni to come in and talk to students about what they do. We don't have anywhere near enough people coming in to say, this is what I do, this is how I got there, this is what I wish I had done differently in school or would have done differently if I could have. There's such a rich, available information there that it takes phone calls. Yes, it takes time, it takes coordination, but we miss that opportunity every single day.
Yeah, when I was at Mid-Maine Technical Center, the local technical high school, I was involved with the chamber. Between the chamber in Mid-Maine Chamber and the Rotary Club, I had 500 names of local people that were willing to come into the schools. So that's in Waterville, Maine. I mean, it's not that big of a town, but there were 500 different people that could do it. And so you're right. And I think for me, if I was a superintendent, I would have every teacher every semester bring a career speaker into their class that's related to their subject area. And it would accomplish two things, exactly what you're saying. That is, we need to get people more aware of the job, but it would also educate the teachers what's out there. Teachers that they've lived a college prep isolated view of the world. I mean, you college prep high school, go on to a four-year college, and then you work in a school. There are a lot of teachers. Not many teachers have a lot of experience out in the workforce, except in CTI. But
Right. Very true.
so, well, we'll give Scott a chance, and then anybody can sort of add on anything we want, and then we'll wrap this up.
I think I really like what Karen and Rich are saying. I think what's interesting though is that we have an alumni panel that we have come in December, and we invite a whole swaths of students that we can who've done military, any type of post-secondary, that's school, trade programs. We try really hard, technical colleges. We try really hard to get a wide variety of that. But it's getting the students to show up to it. The other thing we do too is we have career Wednesdays for callbacks. So we have people who are in the community that will come into U32 and talk for an hour, or half an hour about their careers that they have. If students are interested, but it's getting them to show up. And that's, I think what we're starting to run into now is that we're trying to offer these things and offer these situations, but how do we get students to show up to come to this? And I think we try to, we send out surveys for interest, so they're high interest, and pull from that, do direct invites with students and try to do that. And so sometimes I wonder if it's just, there's an overwhelmness with the amount of information that's out there, or, yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's a question we've been grappling with, is how do we engage students better in this process? And for me, I'm really lucky. I have a nephew. I use him as an example all the time, who got his associates in welding. I say he's making as much as I am right now on a lot less school and can travel all over the world if he wants to. And that, I think, is a way in for some students too that I've used a couple times. Like, oh, you could do this. And so I want to echo on what both Karen and Rich were saying too, for sure. And the embedded credits are really important as well. And but also just how to get students to show up to things.
Well, and that's why I say bring them into the classroom. The students don't have a choice. But other final thoughts on any of this stuff that we've talked about?
Jump in there. One of the things that's very interesting, of course, I'm at a career center, so students have come to us already declaring an area that they're interested in. And so again, we have to look at it a success if while they're with us, they find out they're really not that interested in it. But one of the things we've been doing with a lot of our students are crosswalks in the industry. For example, we have our human services and health science students who both work or can work in elder care settings in different capacities. And we'll take them here next week. It's going to be on a tour of a major new development in White River Junction that they're building an 80-unit, 5-story complex to house. It'll be 50 apartments for assisted living and another 30 for memory care. So we're getting them in on the ground floor as the building is being built so they can see what goes into the planning of a facility like that. So we try to, with high school students, expose them to a variety of career areas, not just for what they're signed up for here at the Career Center.
It's awesome. Scott or Karen, any other final thoughts?
I'll just say one thing from having been in the high school world for the last few years, particularly teaching freshmen who weren't always receptive to thinking about their futures. In fact, sometimes it was as if taking an interest assessment might reveal something that they didn't want to find out about themselves. About it. And so I think we have to think about where the students are at and engage them at the point where they are. And it isn't a one size fits all. We have to be clever, and we have to think about doing it in lots of different ways and at lots of different touch points for the students so that we can continue to reinforce the message repeatedly.
Scott, any final thoughts?
I'm just going to go with what you had said earlier, is that integration into the classroom, because I think that starts to take away some of the stigma, also some of the stigma of what a school counselor does and is, and being out in the school and not in an office somewhere. Yeah. More embeddedness. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. So these are some of the these are the things that I heard. One is, it's okay to fail, and I think we really do need to embrace failure and not see it as failure, but see it as learning opportunities. And I think too many people they want to get the A all the time, and maybe they're afraid of assessment because they're afraid that I'll take an interest assessment and it'll tell me to do something that's a D for them. You know, it's a grade. It's not a grade. It's all equal. Those are all equal. The other thing I heard. And it's sort of related to Karen's points about relationships and role models, but I think it's broader than that in the sense that it's everyone's job in the high school and lower to do career work. It's not one person's job. When it's always one person's job, then I'll deal with that when I see my guidance counselor and my school counselor. No, it's everybody's job. It's the principal's job, superintendent's, and it's through all people. I mean, we all own a piece of this to really help our students. The other thing is, a lot of this is simply awareness, real job world awareness. And one of the frustrations I had as a school counselor too was I always felt like they're not listening, like Karen was saying, they're not listening to me today. Well, the reality is, for lots of people, lots of us, we need to hear stuff like 10 times. And what we don't know as a career coach, a career counselor, school counselors, whatever, we don't know what number we are in that, right? Sometimes we're at the beginning of that when a person actually listened to us, but they're not going to do anything until someone else says something. But sometimes you're at the end of that and it feels good and you get some feedback. Oh, yeah. But you just got to remember, this needs to be coming at people multiple times from all kinds of different angles. And I think that's really a big part of this process for career development in the school level. Anyways, I wanted to just wrap up here. Just a second here. So I'm Jim Peacock, and I'm with Peak Careers Consulting. Hopefully you enjoyed this interview today. I offer the Facilitating Career Development course. I've been doing that in Maine since 2001, and I'm now offering that in New Hampshire, Vermont area on an annual basis as well. I have a lot of online discussion-based seminars. There's actually one going on right now. It's not on the screen, but there is a K-12 online seminar going on. Actually, Karen's in it. And that's a 5-week discussion-based seminar as well. I do lots of workshops and individual career coaching. If you are a career practitioner, career counselor, or a person who delivers career services, you can sign up on my website, peakcareers.com, and get the top 10 tips working with an undecided person and receive our newsletter for career practitioners. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, Twitter, and I just did an Instagram recently, so now you can find me on Instagram, but I'm all under Peak Careers. So anyways, I just want to say thank you to my guests here, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time. This was great. I think it's an important topic to honor all career pathways. So thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.